My best during this first trimester did not look like my best during other seasons. Doing your best, whatever that looks like in a given season, and then let the rest go. It is so easy as a pregnant mother to get wrapped up in all these anxieties and pressures of feeling like I have to do things perfectly for my baby to turn out X, Y, or Z, and that is just simply not true. In a world obsessed with convenience and quick fixes, I'm approaching wellness differently. After healing from chronic illness by overhauling my entire life, I'm now on a mission to help women like me to thrive and not just survive. I'm Kristen, and you're listening to the OrganiMama Podcast. So, pregnant ladies, I heard you're making a baby registry. Congrats. Also, why are there 137 kinds of pacifiers? And why does every stroller review argue like a cage match? And what is a wipe warmer, and do you need one? Before you open another tab, hear this. The OrganiBaby Guide breaks down exactly what's safe, toxin-free baby stuff that actually matters and what's just marketing noise. It's going to show you the best items to add to your baby registry, what to avoid, and how to make the whole thing way less overwhelming. So head to the show notes, click the link, and grab OrganiBaby. Podcast listeners can get 20% off with code PODCAST. Welcome back to the OrganiMama Podcast. I am so excited to have you guys here today. As you may or may not know, I got pregnant in the summer of 2025, and now I'm going to be recapping for you all of my thoughts on the first trimester, as this is now the third time that I have been through a first trimester. And while my first two pregnancies really weren't that difficult, this one has been a completely different story. And no, I actually don't think that really has anything to do with the gender of the baby, because I've had both genders in the past. Both of those pregnancies were relatively similar, and this one has been completely different, even though obviously it's the same gender as one of my other children. So let's get into it just a little bit, talking about the first trimester of pregnancy. But I think what is really important to talk about before you even jump into the details of the first trimester of pregnancy is what happens before that, which is that preconception period of time. So obviously, I recognize that some of you that are listening to this today, there's going to be a mixed bag of people that are listening. There's some of you who have been through pregnancy and have multiple children or a child. There's some of you who are actively trying to conceive currently and are thinking about pregnancy and all the things that come with that. And then there's some of you that maybe you don't have a partner or a husband, and you're just not even in that stage yet. So this is just something that's kind of interesting to you, but it's still way off in the future. And I also recognize that a lot of times pregnancies are a surprise. And so if that is the case for you, where you found out that you're pregnant and you really weren't planning, first thing I want to say is it's going to be okay. And even if you didn't spend a lot of time preparing your body for pregnancy, there's still a lot you can do now that you are pregnant, to help give your baby the best possible health outcomes of the things that you can control. But that being said, it is always my recommendation that parents or future parents that want to bring a child into the world through biological conception are doing a lot of things beforehand to prepare their bodies for pregnancy. And that's not just the woman. This is also the man as well. So there's kind of 4 different categories that I think are kind of the most important things to consider when you are planning for pregnancy in the future. And truthfully, I don't think that there is a too early to start time frame. I think that the sooner you start this, the better. Even if you're 1 or even 2 years out from your projected timeline of pregnancy, I don't think it's ever too early to prepare. So the first most important thing is, what are you eating? What are you putting inside your body? Because those things really matter. For men, sperm health is usually determined by choices that they are making about 4 to 5 months prior. So if you think about where your husband is at, or your spouse is at, your partner is at currently, what decisions they're making right now is going to affect the kind of sperm that they're releasing in about 4-ish months from now. So that's why it's really important for a man who is wanting to be a participant in a conception to be really thoughtful about choices that he's making several months in advance to help his sperm be in the best possible quality for conception and pregnancy. Because it is true that the health of a baby in the womb, and and outside of the womb, it's 50% mom's DNA and 50% dad's DNA. And so mom and dad really have to work together to plan and prepare for healthy baby and honestly healthy pregnancy. So if you have a mom who's been working super hard on her nutrition and her supplements and all of these things, but the husband has not done those things, that may impact the health of the child. So it really is important to encourage your man to get on board with all of these things. And sometimes it takes time for them to get really gung-ho about changing their diet or adding supplements in or changing their exercise routine or lowering their stress. So that's why I really recommend there's no too early to start time frame, because the more you can introduce this topic, the more you can work through it together as a couple, the better. So for men, you want to be thinking about what you're eating. The things that I would recommend avoiding during that preconception period are going to be things like alcohol. Alcohol, we know, is highly inflammatory and also can negatively impact sperm quality. So avoiding alcohol, avoiding lots of heavily processed foods, so like fast food, lots of things with highly processed and refined seed oils, things that contain processed sugar. Ideally, you want your husband to be consuming a large amount of protein during the day, and protein and healthy fats and lots of fiber. The average adult should be consuming about 40 grams of fiber per day, which if you think about what that actually breaks down to, it's a lot and it takes a lot of work to get there. You don't want to just jump in from eating 0 fiber per day to 40 grams because then your body won't really be able to handle it. But slowly working your way up to making sure that every meal that you consume contains 10 to 15 grams of fiber is a really, really great way to help have regular bowel movements and just really get your body in a great place for pregnancy. This is true for both men and women. And really a lot of these tips that I would say for men are the same for women. You and your spouse should be kind of a team in your preconception efforts of nutrition, and sleep is a second one. There is lots of clinical evidence pointing to ample sleep being a huge factor in egg health and sperm health for both men and women. So you really want to be trying to limit things like excessive blue light before bed. Yes, that means you shouldn't be binging 3 hours of TV in your bed right before you go to sleep. Try to shut off electronic devices an hour before you sleep so that you can let your circadian rhythm do its thing. And that's going to help reduce your cortisol and help your circadian rhythm to function optimally, which does impact fertility. So nutrition, sleep, and then stress levels. This is a huge thing. Stress and cortisol highly impact fertility, including sperm quality and egg quality. So this is something that obviously we don't have complete control over in our fallen world. There are a lot of things out there that are stressful, but if there are things that you can do to help reduce your stress levels, that is always good. Like if you're like, hey, I have this decision I'm trying to make, and if I do this, I'm going to feel more stressed, but maybe I'll feel more successful. And if I do this, I'll be less stressed, but maybe we'll have less money, or whatever the outcome of that is. If you're deciding between something that's going to give you more stress and something that's going to give you less stress when you're in that preconception or pregnancy era, I will always recommend choose the less stress thing, even if that means less of something else too, because the stress is way more important to regulate your nervous system than it is to have money, than it is to have influence, than it is to have whatever else that you may be pursuing that is going to bring stress with it. A calm, regulated body is one of the best things you can do for your future babies. Another thing is avoiding toxins. You guys obviously know that I'm incredibly passionate about this, but there are things out there, specifically hormone disrupting chemicals that are in our everyday products that you want to be avoiding as a woman, and also your spouse as well. So, you guys are probably familiar with all of the different chemicals, or some of the different chemicals that I speak out against pretty regularly that can be found in a lot of personal care products. One of the biggest hitters is going to be fragrance, artificial fragrance. So if you're looking at the label of a beauty product and you see the word fragrance on there, and it doesn't include parentheses where everything is listed out, which most of the time it won't, if you see fragrance on the back of a label, you can pretty much just assume that you need to toss it, because brands who are putting fragrance on the back of their product are intentionally not disclosing to you what's in it. And it's an umbrella label that allows them to put pretty much anything in there, including phthalates, which are known endocrine disruptors and contribute to certain types of cancer. So you really, 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 for yourself, for your husband, want to be tossing anything that contains artificial fragrance on the label. And there's a few other things that are important too, like parabens. If you see methylparaben or propylparaben on the back of a product, just toss that one as well. Parabens are also notorious for screwing up your hormones and contributing to cancer risk. So making sure you clean up your products. If you're not sure what that looks like or what products are even safe, be sure to grab a copy of my guide, OrganiBeauty, because it covers how to read ingredient labels for yourself. And there's also a master list of ingredients to avoid on there. And it also gives tons of recommendations of safe products for you, for your husband, and for children as well. So it covers safe personal care products for the whole family. And that includes things like personal lubricant, condoms. So even if you're like, hey, we don't really want to conceive yet, but we want to be working on protecting our hormones and getting our genitals to a healthier place. If you are the type of couple that is using contraceptives like condoms, make sure you're using non-toxic ones, because that matters too. So all of that can be found in OrganiBeauty, and I will put a special discount code for podcast listeners in the show notes below. So be sure to check that out if you don't have a copy of that already. So preconception, you want to be thinking about nutrition, you want to be thinking about stress, you want to be thinking about sleep, and you want to be thinking about reducing your toxin exposure levels. Additional things that you can do is specifically supplementing to target optimal fertility and egg and sperm health. So personally, I really loved the needed prenatal. So I took that all throughout my preconception era, which was also postpartum for me this time because I had a baby. And then my husband took the needed sperm support plus, and I took the egg support. So those are both really great supplements that I recommend for anybody who is in that preconception era. We started those about 6 months before we conceived our third baby. So those are really, really great options for just boosting your minerals and nutrients and making sure your body is in an optimal place. Okay, so let's jump ahead to conception and first trimester. That was a good amount of background on preconception, and hopefully that helps encourage you on what to think about and what to do for that whole period of time. Okay, so if you are completely new to this whole thing, there are some things to consider when it comes to conception, to making a baby. The first thing is that pregnancy is counted by number of weeks, and it actually starts at the first day of your last period. So when someone tells you like, oh, I'm 15 weeks pregnant, that actually means a baby has only been growing in their womb for about 13 weeks, because the way that they're tracking is that they're assuming that you ovulated on day 14 of your cycle, which means 14 days after the start of your last period. And then ovulation is the date of conception, because either you're intimate on that day and egg and sperm meet on that day to create a baby, or you were intimate the days prior and the sperm were waiting for that egg to get released and then connected on ovulation day. So regardless of kind of when the intimacy happened in the few days leading up to ovulation, ovulation day is considered the day that life is created, that spark happens, those cells begin to multiply and create a new life. And so they're usually considering day 14 of your cycle to be the first day that life starts, but that is considered week 2 or the start of week 3 of pregnancy, I guess. And so most people don't find out they're pregnant until at least 10 to 12 days after ovulation. And so most of the time, if you're testing for pregnancy, you're not going to get a positive test until you're about 3.5 to 4 weeks along, even though that new baby has really only been growing and forming for about 10 to 12 days. Now, this is just an average. I do know of women that have received positive pregnancy tests 7 days after ovulation and women that haven't received a positive until 14 or 15. So everybody is unique, because after that conception happens, that new baby that's quickly growing also has to implant inside your uterus. And so usually that HCG hormone, which is what triggers a positive pregnancy test, isn't really being created in your body until implantation happens, which is why it takes several days after conception for a positive test to occur. So now let me tell you about what happened to me. I usually track my cycle very, very closely, and I am not a day 14 ovulator. So I don't usually ovulate on day 14. I don't normally expect that to be true. And so when, like, for example, in the past, when I've gone to either a midwife or a doctor and they've asked me, and I know that I'm pregnant, and they've asked me what was the first day of your last menstrual cycle, I don't usually tell them the truth, because the reason that they're asking that is so that they can calculate how far along I am based on an estimated ovulation of day 14. I know that I usually ovulate at around day 16 or day 17, and so I would usually tell them about 3 days later than the actual start date of my last period, because I want them to more accurately calculate my ovulation day. So if you know exactly what day you ovulated based on ovulation testing, you can just count back 14 days and just pretend that that was the start of your period when you're telling your provider what the date was, because they're trying to figure out when you ovulated. They don't actually care when your last period was. Just a helpful tip. And the same can be true of like ultrasound techs. If they're asking you, if you're going for your first ultrasound and they're like, oh, what was the first day of your last period? The reason they're asking that is because they want to know what day you ovulated, and they're assuming it was day 14. So if you know what day you ovulated, just count 14 days back from there and use that date when you tell them when your last menstrual cycle was. Okay, so normally I am super, super on top of ovulation, and usually it's pretty consistent for me. Obviously, I was still breastfeeding at the time that this baby was conceived, so that leaves a little bit of variation in there, which is pretty normal. I normally was ovulating around day 16 or 17 of my cycle, and so we weren't really trying to get pregnant this particular month that we did. We weren't against it, but we weren't really actively trying to. And so actually what happened is I say randomly, I know there were factors like stress that were playing into it. We had just moved to a new state and left all of our family behind, and Nick was starting a new job. There was just a lot going on. So I'm sure that's what caused this to happen, but I ovulated on day 8, which is almost probably 9 days earlier than normal. And so I didn't think I was fertile at that point, because usually you're only fertile for 4 to 5 days prior to ovulation. And so I thought we were still in the safe window. I was like, oh, I'll probably ovulate on like day 15, 16, or 17. So just around like day 10. Then we will proceed with caution, if you know what I mean. And so on day 8, I thought we were in the clear. And so I didn't realize that I had ovulated that day. I also wasn't tracking things super, super closely. I was using ovulation test strips, which have always worked well for me. Not everybody, that's not always the best thing for everyone. Usually the best combination of things is tracking your temperature, tracking your cervical mucus, and tracking with ovulation test strips. That's kind of like a triple proof way of kind of making sure you know where you're at. I was only using one of those, not all 3, but I noticed on like day 11 of my cycle that my cervical mucus was not what I was expecting it to be leading up to ovulation, because usually it starts to change as you lead up to ovulation, and then after you ovulate, it kind of goes away. And I noticed that it had basically gone away, and so I was like, this is not what I would expect to be happening a couple days before ovulation. And so I thought, I wonder if I ovulated a lot earlier this month than normal. Now, I will say that if I had been tracking cervical mucus those days prior, I probably would have realized what was going on. I was being lazy, honestly. I wasn't really tracking it. But I started tracking it a few days after and realized that it was dried up. And so, yeah, what do you know about, cycle day, what was that? Probably 18. So 10 days after I actually did ovulate but wasn't totally sure, I decided to take a pregnancy test because I had been gagging at things that day, which was very strange. And it was positive. Have you ever taken a sip of a protein shake and instantly made the face? You know what I'm talking about. Like, why is it gritty? Why does it taste like regret? And why does vanilla feel like a lie? That's why I love Equip protein powder. It's made from real food ingredients, grass-fed beef protein, flavors you can trust, and it actually tastes good without all of the weird and yucky stuff. So if you want protein that doesn't feel like a punishment, check the show notes, click the link, and try Equip. My code KVG gets new customers 15% off. Well, I saw a very faint line actually, and I was like, it was a squinter where you're like, you really got to squint to see it. And I was like, I'm going to test again tomorrow. So I tested again the next day, and it was darker. And I was like, well, here we go. Like, that was definitely my fault for not being more on top of tracking certain things about my cycle. But also, we were super happy because we knew we had been wanting a baby soon. We just weren't sure we wanted one that soon, but it was all good. It was fine. However, what I did not anticipate was how sick I was going to be. I am fortunate to have never thrown up a single time during any of my pregnancies. And I know some of you right now are just like cursing me over your phones because you're like, you don't know what it's like to suffer. And I will admit, I do not know what it's like to vomit a lot during pregnancy or at all during pregnancy. I actually have emetophobia, which is the irrational fear of throwing up. And so I think whenever I'm exposed to things like the stomach flu or the norovirus, my body just kind of like stuffs it. And yeah, I'm like more of like it comes out the other way kind of girl, if you know what I mean. So I have never vomited during pregnancy, but I also haven't really experienced nausea, at least not much at all. And so with both of my previous two children, with my first, I was like a little nauseous between weeks 6 and 8. I had some minor food aversions, but it really was not bad. Like I was gagging while brushing my teeth, and that was pretty much it. With my second, I was a little bit more sick with him. I think part of it was that I was exhausted from having a toddler running around. And I was just really tired, but I had some food aversions. And again, it was like between weeks 6 and 10, I would say, like really for about 4 weeks, I just felt a little bit off, but it wasn't too bad. I could still eat normally. It was just a little harder for me to get things down, but I was able to eat 3 full meals every day and get my prenatals down, and I never threw up. This time, like I said, I was gagging before I even got a positive test. Like even before there was a clear line, I was gagging at stuff. And I wish I would have kind of been mentally prepared for what would come with that. But essentially, it was probably the worst summer I have ever had. I was so nauseous but from July, August, September, and into a little bit of October, I was not feeling good. And it was really rough. And we, like I said, we had just moved. Nick had just started a new job. I had a 3.5-year-old and 1.5-year-old running around at home, and we were far from family. And I was spending pretty much all day, every day on the couch or in bed, either sleeping or just trying to drink water. And it was really tough. And honestly, as somebody who prides myself on cooking almost all of my meals at home and eating a really nutrient-dense diet, it was a very humbling experience to realize the only thing that I am literally going to be able to swallow right now is Portillo's cheese fries, which probably has like carrageenan and yellow 5 in it. But I honestly would rather eat trash than eat nothing, because if I eat nothing, then I will feel even worse. And so it was just a really humbling experience, to be completely honest. And I think the thing that was tough is as I started sharing about it on social media, because I announced my pregnancy on Instagram like a few days after I found out. I was maybe just barely 5 weeks when I announced, because I wanted to bring people along the journey with me and also help to make the first trimester feel more normal, because I think a lot of times I see content creators and influencers not talking about their first trimester, and they don't announce until they're well into their second trimester. And I think I just wanted to do things differently. And I wanted to say like, hey, I'm going to walk you guys through this experience with me and show you like it's normal to not feel good and all these things. At that point, I didn't even realize how bad I was going to feel, but it was kind of enjoyable to get to share about that as much as I didn't really even want to be posting anything because I felt so bad. It was nice to have this sense of sisterhood with other people that were going through the same thing because I was getting a lot of messages from you guys saying like, oh, I'm like 2 days behind you or I'm a week ahead of you and I'm not doing so good either. And it's nice to see you sharing about that openly. And so that mattered a lot to me and I'm glad I got to do that. But I would say that it was just tough. Like it was tough. There were very few things I could eat. I had some very severe food aversions. I was so exhausted and I think I was a little depressed, to be honest, just not really having much community in our new home area yet, not having many friends, not really having people to talk to in real life about how I was struggling. And with Nick being gone with his new residency schedule, working crazy hours and a lot of overnights, it was just tough and makes me kind of wonder if I really want to go through all of that again. I don't know. God knows. But we've always said we think we want, 4 kids maybe. But I'm like, gosh, this was a really hard first trimester. And I didn't even throw up. So I'm like, I can't even imagine how much more horrible it would have been to like add actual vomiting on top of all of that. But I felt like I was going to throw up kind of all of the time, like nonstop. And there were certain places like in our new city that like I visited during some of my worst weeks of nausea that I still can't go back to now because it just made me so sick to think about going there because I remembered how sick I felt when I was there. Like certain streets near our house that I like don't even turn down anymore because I'm like, I just remember like gagging and trying not to puke on that road. It's just so hard. It is so hard, especially with littles at home and all of the things. And I think what was really challenging is I was receiving a lot of messages from people being like, oh, you need to do this, or you need to take this, or if you just add this supplement, you're going to feel good. And I just want to say for the record, I know all of the right things to do. Maybe not every single thing, but I am pretty dang educated on nutrition and supplements and pregnancy and hormones. And I really did my very best to do all the right things. And I still felt sick. And I think my heart just goes out to those of you who have struggled with pregnancy illness, because there is so much chatter, especially online, about like, oh, well, if you just do this differently, if you just do that, if you just eat this, if you just don't eat this, if you just drink this, you won't have sickness. And it's just more complicated than that. We are complex individuals with physical, emotional, mental, spiritual needs that are all playing into how a pregnancy works out. And, I was under a lot of stress. We had just moved. We were in a new place. We knew no one. We had just been through a really traumatic process of finding out where Nick was going to do his residency back in March of 2025. And then right after that, I got the shingles because of how stressed I was. So I think my body just really didn't have time to process and recover from all of the change. And earlier I was talking about the importance of minimizing stress. And I think that if I could go back, I don't know what I would have done differently. I think I would have tried to focus even more on reducing my stress levels before we got pregnant. And obviously we weren't, like I said, this was a little bit of a surprise, not a huge surprise, but a little bit of surprise with the timing. A little sooner than I probably would have wanted, but it's all good. But yeah, I mean, the first trimester was super hard. And I think a lot of that was emotional and stress, like nervous system related, because I took the right supplements. I did my best to eat the right things. I did all the electrolytes. I did all the mineral balancing, and I still felt really sick. And so I just want to acknowledge that there really is like a huge emotional, spiritual component to how you feel during pregnancy. And I was not thriving in this one. And I think that was reflected in how my body felt. So it was very, very challenging. I think some of my best tips for kind of managing that overwhelming sense of nausea is eating protein whenever you can get it down, eating anything, really just every 2 to 3 hours. some of my worst moments would be after a whole night of sleeping and getting up to pee a million times. But a whole night of sleeping, you just feel so sick in the morning that you didn't want to eat anything. And this was actually during my previous pregnancy when we were still living in Indiana. My home birth midwife at the time recommended that if you're dealing with a lot of nausea, you should be waking yourself up every 2 to 3 hours in the night to eat something. And I said, well, what do you recommend? She said, well, anything that's a complex carb. So a carb that also has fats and protein in it. And she really recommended almonds. And so I kept a bag of raw almonds on my bedside table. And eating those like every 2 or 3 hours or every time I woke up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night was actually incredibly helpful, because just having a little bit of something in your stomach that has, balanced macros, protein, fat, and fiber, it really does help. Even if you don't feel like eating, the longer you go without eating, the worse you're going to feel. And so my body also really craved a lot of sour things. And so I was making homemade lemonade, which really helped. I would use like a splash of maple syrup and some fresh squeezed lemon, as well as a pinch of salt, and then just filtered water with ice. And that really helped me a lot too. I think that my body was probably craving a lot of vitamin C, which is why I was craving like lemon and lime. Sparkling water is not the best option from a gut health standpoint, but when it's the only thing you can palate in terms of liquids during pregnancy, that is way better than not drinking anything. So ideally you want to be drinking half your body weight in ounces of water. So like at least 80 ounces of water, if not 100. And then ideally, you also want to be shooting for 100 grams of protein a day during pregnancy, because that really, really helps with that development for baby. And so those were the things I did my best to do. I did not do a perfect job of them, and some days I wasn't able to eat a whole lot, but I was still focusing on making sure to get in a high quality prenatal every single day, because I knew that I truly could not get all my nutrients from food during that season. And then focusing on 100 ounces of water and 100 grams of protein every day. And I did my very, very best. And those things helped curb the worst of the nausea for sure. So those would be my recommendations. If you are really, really struggling with nausea, try to eat every 2 to 3 hours, a complex carb, maybe a handful of nuts. Try to get, 20 to 30 grams of protein with each meal. Focus on a lot of hydration with minerals and electrolytes. I really love the Just Ingredients fruit punch electrolytes. Those ones taste really nice and were helpful. I also love the Quinton isotonic electrolytes. I took those like 3 times a day. They're pretty pricey, but they're very nutrient dense. And so that really helped me a lot with my nausea. Also, Michelle's Well is my favorite place to get herbal tea. And she has a morning sickness tea that is just chef's kiss. So good. And that really helped me a lot with my nausea as well. It does have ginger. So if you're sensitive to ginger, if ginger makes you nauseous, then I would avoid it. But if ginger is helpful for you, that is the best tea ever. And I will make sure and link that below in the show notes with my discount code so you can check it out. But those were some of the things that really, really helped me just to kind of overcome the worst of it. But I'm not going to lie, it did not solve the problem. I was nauseous up until like week 15. So just hang in there. I know it sucks when you're at like week 8 and you're like, I feel terrible and I need this to end like tomorrow or else I'm not going to live. Like you will live, but it is going to suck. And I'm sorry if you're in that place or if you're about to be in that place. I know what it feels like. I know how tough it is. And it is worth it to fight through for your baby, but it also is just so hard, along with all the other anxiety that you're feeling during the first trimester, such as anxiety about miscarriage, anxiety about your own health, or worrying that something that you ate or that you forgot to take your prenatal is going to harm your baby. And I just want to encourage you that like any one decision that you make is not going to be the reason why something potentially bad could happen. Like if you do suffer a miscarriage, if you experience a loss, I don't want you to start going back and recounting, I forgot to take my prenatal on these 3 days, or, I had this sugary drink the day before. No, that is not the reason why. And if you are doing your best, even if your best isn't what your best would look like at another season of life, because my best during this first trimester did not look like my best during other seasons. I literally could not do or eat or have the energy for the things that I normally could when I'm feeling well. So doing your best, whatever that looks like in a given season, and then let the rest go. And I say that all the time, you guys. Do your best and let go of the rest. And the same is true during pregnancy. And it is so easy as a pregnant mother to get wrapped up in all these anxieties and pressures of feeling like I have to do things perfectly for my baby to turn out X, Y, or Z. And that is just simply not true. Ultimately, the future of your child lies in the hands of a perfect God who loves you and loves your child so, so much. But we do live in a broken world and things do go wrong and things do happen. Tragedies occur. And all the best that you can do is to show up each day and do the next best thing that you can do and then surrender the rest to the Lord and say, God, this is not in my hands. This is in your hands. And gosh, as a parent, that is so hard with our kids, isn't it? To say, well, this baby is yours, out of my hands. Like, easier said than done, right? But it's important that we can learn to surrender these things to our Heavenly Father and cast our burdens onto Him. And speaking of burdens, I think another choice that I make during pregnancy and honestly preconception and postpartum is I avoid watching things that are going to cause a lot of stress or anxiety inside of me. So that involves like scary movies, high action movies, anything that's going to like elevate my heart rate and make me be like, oh, I just avoid it. And that also includes like current events and news. For the most part, there were some big current events that happened during my first trimester that were literally all over social media and I couldn't completely avoid them. But I don't go out of my way to seek out reading the news or reading current events because I just don't think that that's beneficial when I'm pregnant. I think there are seasons when it is important to engage with what's happening in the world, but I don't think pregnancy is necessarily one of those ones where you should be engaging heavily. Okay. Do I have any other tips for the first trimester? I would say focusing on having emotional and physical intimacy with your spouse, even when you feel crummy, can really, really help make that first trimester feel better. I've mentioned this a few times, but we had just gone through a huge transition. We were in a new place and we were like me and Nick, we were kind of all that we had for those first few months of my third pregnancy. And you know, it was really important for us to get in bed every night and talk together and pray together and engage in, physical contact with each other. Even if I kind of felt touch averse, that filled my emotional cup in ways that I didn't really realize I needed. And so I just really encourage you, lean into that support from your person. Don't shut them out. Try to include them in how you're feeling. And it's also important to recognize that if pregnancy is hard for you, it's hard on them too. And no, it's not the same. You don't have to, it's not a comparison game of like who has it worse. And you don't have to be like, well, you need to do this and this for me because I'm the one who's pregnant and suffering. Like they know, they know that you're pregnant and suffering. It's not a comparison game, but it is new. It's hard for them too. Like it was hard for him to have to like make dinner for the kids every night and put them to bed on the nights when he was home because I just didn't feel up to it. And for me to just be napping during all the times he was home, that was hard for him. And so I think just recognizing that what your partner is going through is a version of hard or new that's different than yours, but it's still valid and important to recognize that for them. And I think just prioritizing emotional, spiritual, physical closeness with your person while you're navigating pregnancy, whether or not you even have a hard pregnancy or a hard first trimester, is one of the best, most beneficial things you can do. So that's kind of a lot of my thoughts on the first trimester and even the preconception era. If you want to read more about what a day of eating looks like or what a recommended day of eating looks like, along with all of my favorite supplements for preconception and first trimester and recommendations on what to do for exercise during that time, also just tips on reducing stress and sleeping enough and getting enough water, all of that is written out in the OrganiMama's Guide to Pregnancy, which I will also link below and include a special discount code for you guys. So be sure to check that out in the show notes if you haven't already grabbed that. That covers preconception, first, second, third trimester, prepping for birth, what to expect for labor and birth in a hospital setting or a home birth setting. It covers literally everything that I know about preconception and pregnancy and birth. And it's like packed with information. So I think you guys will love it. There's lots of people out there that are already actively using this guide and have sent me a lot of positive feedback, which is super encouraging. But if you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. There's a code for you below. But thank you so much for joining me today as we discuss the beginning of pregnancy. This is not my favorite stage of life, but it's an important one to discuss and know how to be prepared for, to kind of make it through it. I don't even want to say successfully, but to survive it and feel like you can come out on the other side with a good perspective on what you experienced. So as hard as it's been for me to have had such a difficult third trimester in this pregnancy, I am grateful for it because I think it taught me a lot of things, and it also helped me to better relate to a lot of you guys. Since my first 2 pregnancies really weren't too difficult, this one was much more so. And as much as I don't want to relive it, I'm also grateful for the things it taught me. And I hope that some of the things I shared today will be helpful for you as you either go through pregnancy soon or in the future, or even if you're just reflecting back on what pregnancy has looked like for you in the past. I'm so glad you're here, and I cannot wait to catch you on the next episode of the OrganiMama Podcast. Bye for now. Okay, who else is confused about pregnancy? You know, that moment when you pee on a stick, scream a little, and then instantly start Googling, wait, what? What foods should I eat? Do I actually need to have a birth plan? And is it weird that my belly button is trying to escape my body? I would like to tell you about the OrganiMama's Guide to Pregnancy. It's like having that one friend who's done all the homework, but without the judgment. We're talking trimester tips, meal ideas, birth prep, ultrasounds, the glucose test, all wrapped up in one beautiful digital guide. If you want to go from I have no idea to yeah, I've got this, check the show notes, click the link, and grab the pregnancy guide. Podcast listeners can get 20% off with code PODCAST.